Mr. Carr?
Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Graham, members of the Judiciary Committee, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Chalmers Carr. I'm a first-generation farmer from South Carolina, where my wife and I own and operate Titan Farms. We grow peaches, bell pepper, eggplant, and broccoli. Over the last 24 years, we have grown into the second largest peach operation in the country. We could not have done this without participating in the H-2A program for the last 25 years, where we annually bring in over 800 workers, and we have over a 90% return rate of these workers. This, coupled with our great full-time employees, have allowed us to build a future for us and our family. I greatly appreciate you holding this vitally important hearing entitled Farm to Table, Immigrant Workers Get the Job Done. While this was very true for more than the last half of the century, things have changed greatly. There's ample evidence that we have a substantial shortage of domestic and immigrant workers choosing to work in agriculture. Yet non-immigrant workers, guest workers coming in through the H-2A program are taking these jobs by the hundreds of thousands. Unfortunately, ag labor reform has been tied to immigration reform since 1990. Therefore, we have had no reform to ag labor. As a result, we have a very fragile food supply chain that was highlighted during the pandemic. Food inflation is at an all-time high. Our imports and our dependence on foreign countries for food sources is growing rapidly. The Department of Labor is using a flawed wage methodology, which has increased wages nationally 7% this year and 24% over the last 5 years. 10 states this year, like mine, and like Adams in Florida, saw double-digit wage increases. To couple the problem, DOL has recently passed a new wage rule that will bring in new wages, higher wages, and more complexity to the H-2A program, adding fuel to this problem. Allow me to share a few impacts from our farm. Under the flawed AWARE methodology, this year our wages increased 14%. This will result in a $2.6 million payroll increase. But more importantly, it will raise the cost of our box of peaches 5%. This is what we call food inflation. The problematic new DOL wage rule will drive our wages up another 10 to 15%, adding another $2 million to our payroll. We will have to file 15 to 20 H-2A contracts annually instead of the 5 that we currently do. We will have to hire 2 full-time employees, 1 in HR and 1 in accounting, just to implement this new rule. And we are very concerned about the liability of this new rule, as it is very vague to how it's going to be applied. Honestly, with these changes, these recent changes in the current H-2A program, we are finding it difficult to understand if we can remain profitable. Things to consider. The adverse effect wage rate, as Adam said, was designed to make sure that we protected domestic workers from foreign workers coming in and lowering wages in similarly employed positions. But yet we have less than 1%, as Leon said, 0.006% of American workers choosing to do these jobs. So who are we adversely affecting? I would say we're adversely affecting the U.S. consumer with higher food prices. We are threatening our national security as our increased dependence on foreign imports grows. And yes, we're affecting the American family farm. The new DOL wage rule uses BLS, Department of Bureau of Labor Statistics, non-farm wages to set new wage rates. How can this be considered similarly employed? That's like comparing peaches to oranges. I believe the future of our great nation is imperative that we reform the H-2A program in order to stop and hopefully undo many of these negative trends that I've shared with you. But first, I implore you to prioritize ag labor crisis as a national security issue, to separate ag labor reform from immigration reform, which seems to be intractable. By supporting and passing the following: Senate Joint Resolution 25, a congressional review action on the new DOL wage rule, and supporting the bipartisan bill S-874, Farm Operation Act. This is the first step you can do to put a tourniquet on the problem. The next steps I would ask you to do is examine the issue closely. Understanding the world today And the world today and our labor force is completely different than it was just 20 years ago. Study the issue, debate the issue, and then pass meaningful agriculture labor reforms that will help secure our country's future. I stand ready to work with you, and I thank you for allowing me to testify today. I appreciate you having this hearing, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thanks, Mr. Carr.